Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of The Enthusiasm Project. My name is Tom, and today I wanted to go over something kind of positive with you guys because we're on week 400 of stay-at-home quarantine, and some people are starting to go a little bit stir-crazy, myself included, and Heather and I are in, what we feel is a pretty fortunate situation. As a teacher, my income isn't hugely really affected at all by the quarantine and everything. She works from home, so her work is able to continue. We have a decent amount of square footage and a yard, and we're pretty lucky in terms of where you could get stuck when you have to be stuck at home. Just personally knowing some of my students in their situations, I know they are not nearly all that lucky and that fortunate. So my point is, despite that, we're starting to go just still a little stir crazy, and we're in an ideal situation. So I can imagine for other people who are in more stressful, uncertain, or less desirable situations, the frustration is really starting to kick in. So I wanted to make sure we talk about positive things today. I've been doing a lot of online classes with my students, and it's kind of actually made me really miss just being in the classroom with students and working with them and that one-on-one engagement. So I wanted to reflect on that a little bit, and that's going to be the bulk of what we talk about today. But it's kind of been a while since we've done any sort of business updates, and if you've been following this podcast for a while, that was a main focus of season 2, was my essentially resolution to start a business and that whole process. And right before the quarantine hit, Heather and I had officially launched our LLC, which is, very official. And since then, I don't want to say there's no news, because actually everything is just going along swimmingly, and that's kind of the news. It really is a no news is good news situation. So just to give you quick updates, we do have our LLC, which is official. And that just means that in the government's eyes, we can actually do business legitimately. And if people want to work with us, it's easy for them to actually pay us. And it doesn't seem like this shady, weird thing, or we're not breaking any rules. Everything's very above board and legitimate. It also takes a bit of liability off of our hands if something were to go horribly wrong, or we worked with someone who wasn't the best person to work with or something, that we would just offer that layer of protection. To sort of kick that off the ground, Heather's been working super hard, and I say we launched, but really she launched, and now I help a YouTube mastermind group. And before I give too many of these updates, I'm going to warn you, it's not an ad. I'm not advertising these things to you. I'm telling you about them because that's what we've been talking about on this podcast, and you're part of that journey. If you're interested in them, that's awesome. But just because I'm telling you about them does not mean it's an advertisement. So I just want to be really, really clear about that. But one of the services that we wanted to offer is a mastermind group. So rather than just an online course where you kind of do your own thing at your own pace, we wanted to make sure for people who want it and want to start YouTube channels, there's a place to get curated resources and materials, in addition to a supportive group to help you get started and get off the ground, and access to experienced YouTube creators who can help guide you through the way and offer some feedback. And so we offer a monthly membership to a YouTube mastermind group where we meet several times a month virtually. And then, there's feedback, and there's reviews, and there's channel critiques, and there's Q&A sessions and office hours and group coaching, all that stuff, all those resources you need, in addition to just a supportive environment in general. And it's been so much fun so far. I'm so shocked at how fun this mastermind has been. So it's at ytmastermind.com, just if you want to see what I'm talking about and how it kind of works. The cohort we have has gotten a lot out of it, and some of them are really crushing it with their YouTube channels, and everybody's at different places, and it's refreshing to see that there's some people who can just dive in and really go for it, and other people who need a little bit more support. It's just like working with my students in the classroom. But the cool part is it's a very self-selecting group. By the time somebody has paid a monthly fee to be a part of a group, they have a certain level of commitment, at least to themselves, to get something done, and a certain level of motivation, and that's really fun to work with. It's not compulsory, like public education is, where everyone's forced to be there. It's totally voluntary, and it's been just so much fun to work with that. So that's one of the big things we've been doing to generate our first revenue stream for our LLC. Heather also locked herself away and finished a revamp of her online course, Zero to YouTube Hero, which is a four-part online course to really get a channel up and running. But you can take that at your own pace. There's lifetime access. It's a one-time purchase price, so it's different than the ongoing mastermind membership. So those are our two digital products that we have going. I've also been working to shift my affiliate revenue for my channel towards the LLC, so that way that's just easier to keep track of, easier to document, easier to take care of when tax season rolls around. And that's kind of where we've been with the business. So it's up and running. It's got room to grow for sure, but that's an exciting thing. What I would really love to do is get my own online course going, and we talked about this in previous episodes. The problem is, and I feel like I'm jinxed every time I feel that I've gotten a handle on things and look, I have all these videos, scheduled, so my channel's up to date and I have my work stuff in order and everything is under control. Some giant wrench gets thrown into the works and knocks everything off, almost to the point where I'm scared to get to the point where things feel like they're under control, because it's inviting that chaos to come in. It seems like, and that's kind of happened my whole life, but it feels like lately, 2020 is just a bizarre year to begin with, but it feels like this year, especially anytime you feel like you're kind of pulling your head above water, someone's just going to dump, another tidal wave on top of you. And I don't know. So my goal is I would love to be able to produce an online course before summer begins. Whether or not that happens, we'll see. Talk to me in summer and then we'll know more if that actually happened or not. But in general, it's going really well. The business side of things is going really well. The reason that I also wanted to update that was to give a couple YouTube channel updates, because things have sort of gone interesting there. In January, I celebrated 10,000 subscribers, which after about 2.5 years, I hit that goal, which was huge. And now I'm creeping up closely to 17,000. It's only been 3.5 months. So that's just been ridiculous. And I am so excited about that. And the thing that I noticed, the reason I want to bring it up is not just to brag, but to sort of point out something interesting that I'd heard people talk about in the past about their own channels, but I hadn't experienced myself. So you might know this if you have a channel or an online audience, but it doesn't take the biggest audience in the world before people start approaching you for things. I think maybe it was around when I had 200 or 300 subscribers that a couple of companies started to reach out to me through my YouTube channel. And some of them were really cool people that had small companies related to stuff I was talking about on my channel. One, I remember I talked about traveling with a boosted board, an electric skateboard, and the bag that I used in the video, it worked great, but it kind of got a hole in it when I took it on the plane. Just so happened that the person who owns the company that made that bag saw that video and then was like, hey, we're doing a version 2. Can I send it to you? And then we ended up working together on a few different things. And even some of my students worked with them to do product photography. It was a super cool partnership that all happened with less than 300 subscribers. But also what happens is you start getting these emails from just sort of what seem like random Chinese companies that just sort of have either Amazon storefronts, or a lot of them make third party kind of knockoff products. And they just want you to review them so they can have a video review or something to post on their Amazon storefront or whatever. And in general, I just stay away from those because I'm usually not interested in the product. It's cheap GoPro accessories or something. And the best is when it's something that's not even related to your channel at all. You go to my channel, you see videos about cameras and podcasting gear and all this stuff. And then you send me an email going hey, we've got this foot cream that we think you should really try out and your audience would really love. And it's clearly they don't watch any videos. They're just finding channels and finding the contact address and sending stuff out. It's like a shotgun blast. But anyway, so I tend to stay away from those just because why would you even get involved with that? But the reason I bring that up is because it almost seemed like clockwork, and this is what I'd heard other people talk about. As soon as my channel crossed the 15,000 subscriber milestone, the quality of the email inquiries that I got shifted dramatically. And it was literally like a switch, like someone flipped the switch, and it was still lots of those weird random companies, which, by the way, I actually do respond to their emails because I feel bad. I almost feel like it's like they're telemarketers and they're just trying to do their job. And I know a lot of people just ignore them, which it's probably the best thing to do if you get too many of them. But I've also seen a lot of people on Twitter post, like, they will post transcripts of what they write, and they're proud of it, and they're proud of how rude they're being to these people. So someone will send a thing going, hey, we see your channel, please review our whatever product, and they'll write like F you back or something like really rude and awful that's not at all warranted by the message coming out. And then they'll share it, and then it's a whole thread of people going like, yeah, those people are so stupid and it's so annoying. So I always make sure to write back, thank you for reaching out. I really appreciate it. Right now, this is what I'm focusing on, so I don't think would be a great fit, but best of luck to you and your team. And, it's just someone trying to make a living. I don't know their circumstance, so I don't want to be a jerk to them, and I don't want to just ignore them either, because you never know. You just never know. And it's always better to be nice than to be rude. So that's normally how I handle those. But after 15,000, I started getting people reaching out from companies that I actually know, and services that I've either heard of or actually use myself. And so that has been interesting in terms of growing the channel from a business point of view and like an income point of view. And the thing is, it's easy to say no to those random companies that have products that have nothing to do with what you're doing. It's much more difficult to say no to something that is a great product or service that you're totally fine with. There's nothing wrong with using them, but it just might not be really the best fit in the long run. And that's kind of what I've been running into. So just to give a couple examples, and I'll name names because, they didn't pay me. So yeah. And it's not even a bad story, but one of the ones I got contacted by just this past week was NordVPN. And if you watch YouTube, especially any tech YouTube, Nord has a very large budget they sponsor like every tech thing all the way up to like Casey Neistat's doing NordVPN sponsored spots. So they have a huge advertising budget, and they're willing to invest the money, which actually is something I really appreciate. As annoying as it can be when you're a viewer to have to sit in the middle of a video and hear someone talk about, there's the dog barking, and hear someone talk about NordVPN or Squarespace or something like that. Those are legit companies that are trying to reach the best possible customer base that's most relevant to their product. And they've proven over a number of years that they actually are willing to step up and support, not even smaller, but support creators, support independent creators to do what they do, make a living off what they're doing, make a supplemental income off what they're doing. And I think that's really cool. So even though it can be annoying to hear some of those ads sometimes, I think it's good to remember that those companies are actually supporting these people, and a lot of them give you a lot of leeway and a lot of creative freedom. So, like Squarespace is a great example. You can see anytime you watch a Squarespace ad on a channel, people approach it differently. They might just read the ad, or they might do a totally different sketch or whatever. Like the companies let the creators fit it into whatever their style is. And I think that's really cool. It's probably the best way to do whatever you want to call it, like content marketing. And so Nord reached out and offered to sponsor a video, and I was like, oh, okay. And they have a legit budget that they're willing to work with, and they're super professional because they're a real company with a real product or a service. And I had to say no, which was interesting because I was like, oh, I could make, in this one project, I could make more than my channel would normally make in a month or two, just to do one video, 2 minutes out of one video. But thinking about it, so I asked them some questions, and I was pretty upfront about, I never used their product. I use a VPN. I have a Dashlane account to manage all my passwords. Dashlane comes with a VPN. I just use that one because that's the one that's already there, or I'll use the built-in one on my Mac. Because I do travel, and if I'm in an airport or a conference, like a convention center or a hotel or whatever, it's a good idea to just kind of protect things and use a VPN. but I don't use NordVPN just because I already have access to other ones. And I was pretty upfront with that. And they're like, that's no big deal. Like you could access it for free and understand it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I spent like a day thinking about it. And I was like, this isn't, if Canon were to come to me and say, hey, here's a new camera, like we'll sponsor a video or whatever, that makes really clear sense. This, you can tie it in, like people who do the stuff that I talk about on my channel probably do have some kind of need for online security, but it just didn't align perfectly in a way that I could just imagine as soon as I started doing the read in a video, people would watch it and either lose interest, leave negative comments, or even lose respect for me because I know I've gotten enough feedback to know what people like and dislike about my channel. And a lot of people like down-to-earth authenticity. They don't feel like they're being sold something every 2 seconds. And so I don't want to sell them something every 2 seconds. If it's a natural fit, great. Like I did a video about Polar Pro filters. And I've done a few videos about Polar Pro filters, but the most recent one were the Peter McKinnon variable ND filters. And I had borrowed one from work and tested it out and did a review on it. And then Polar Pro saw that and they were like, that video is really great. We love it. In the video, I mentioned that I'm borrowing it because I don't have my own. They're like, we'd love to just send you one of your own. I was like, oh, awesome. So they sent me a different one, the one that I wanted for my gear. And then I did another video comparing those two. So one was a borrowed one and one was one that had been given to me by Polar Pro. They didn't send it with any conditions that it had to be in a video or I had to say anything special about it. It was just, we like what you're doing. You're promoting our stuff positively. Here you go. And I really appreciate that. And it was a easier, more natural fit. I didn't have to try to shoehorn it in, which is kind of what I felt like I would have to do right now with the NordVPN thing. And I told him, I made sure to just explain all this clearly. I know there's probably more professional ways to handle it, but I went through my whole thought process with them. I explained this is why I appreciate it. I love that they're supporting creators. I know that they provide a good service, but since it's not a super clear fit for my audience right now, and since I'm not personally familiar with their product yet, I didn't really feel comfortable doing it, but I hope that we could collaborate at some point in the future if the possibility presents itself. So I wanted to keep a door open. I didn't want to burn a bridge. But it was saying no to like a decent chunk of income in an uncertain time, just because really though, thinking like that could have been a nice little like payday, but I've spent 3 years working on this channel, 3 years building an audience, 3 years gaining credibility. Do I want to risk losing that for a check? And the answer is absolutely not. So, putting those things in perspective and making sure to follow core values is really important. And then what happened was right after that, Rode sent me an email because one of the reasons my channel has grown so much over the past few months is a lot of my podcasting videos have totally taken off, including the Rodecaster Pro videos that I make, which have always been popular. But since everybody is quarantined at home, they're all starting podcasts. So right now, if you're trying in April or May, right now is May 1st of 2020 to like find online availability of like Rodecaster Pro and podcasting gear, live streaming gear, it is very hard to find. It's like all sold out. And that's because that's what everybody's starting. So those videos have just taken off like crazy and they do really well, which is fine with me because I enjoy making them. It ties in, like if you go to my channel for the past year, my channel banner is literally me with the Rodecaster on one side and a camera on the other. So it fits right in with what my channel is about. Prior to this, my most popular video was an Apple Watch speed test comparison, which is very fun. It has nothing to do with like leveling up the quality of your videos or anything. So I'm happy that the things that's popular now are more in line with what my channel is about. But I didn't even realize, like looking around my room right now, there's a lot of Rode branded stuff in here. There's the Rodecaster Pro, the Rode Pod Mic, the Rode Boom Arm, the Rode Video Mic, the Rode Wireless Mic. At work, we have, 30 or 40 different Rode microphones and booms and whatever that we use, and boom arms and all, and Rodecasters there. So like man, I use a lot of Rode gear, and it's not really on purpose. It's just they kind of make the stuff that suits the needs that I have, which is cool. And it tends to be reasonably priced. So Rode sent me an email, and they didn't offer to sponsor a video, but they just said, hey, we got some really cool new stuff coming out. Can't say any more than that, but we love what you're doing with like the Rodecaster and all those videos. Could we send you a kit of new equipment to just sort of check out? And I was like, yes, please. I will absolutely take that. And I have not received that yet, so I don't know what's in there. I don't know what they're sending. They said like it's secret. You'll see it when you get it. But that's not a direct sponsorship. Obviously, if I made a video about any of that stuff, I would have to say in the video, Rode sent me these things. I didn't pay for them myself. But that was so much easier to say yes to because it's like, oh, this company that I've been using for 10 years wants to send me stuff that I would probably end up buying anyway to check out on my channel. Yes, there's a very clear purpose behind that. And I don't think anyone's really going to get upset if I say, hey, this was, given to me by Rode or whatever, especially knowing that everything else up until then has been just purchased by my paycheck. So the reason I bring those things up is just that's kind of in terms of like business updates. I've noticed a huge uptick as soon as it was past 15,000. That was really where there were fewer of the random companies and more of companies like Nord and Rode and a few others that I actually am familiar with that started reaching out with different opportunities or, products for review or whatever. And it's just interesting. It's just sort of something I wanted to share that maybe it's just a fluke that it happened at that number with me, but seemed like it was very clearly related to 15,000 that all that stuff started happening. So I'd be interested to know if anyone else has seen the same around the same numbers. But it also presented that interesting issue of, oh, now it's not as easy and clear to say no to some things, but it's very important to still say no to them. And it reminds me of way back when I started teaching digital media. Prior to that, teaching English, let's put it this way. If you're a teacher, nobody's going to have any problem taking a lot of your time. Like as much time as you have. It's almost how a goldfish grows to the size of whatever tank it's in. Whatever amount of time you're willing to give up, people will gladly take that and more. And teaching English, a lot of that is kind of on boring stuff. I'm sorry. Like classroom time is very fun, but staff meetings and curriculum development and textbook adoptions and all those things, like all those committees you can serve on, is super boring. And that's why I have to like beg people to be a part of it. But for me, it's easy to say no to those things. If I'm overloaded and busy and stressed and like, do you want to be a part of a textbook adoption committee? No, because I'm probably not going to pay that much attention to the textbook anyway, to be honest with you. So no, not interested in that at all. But when I started teaching digital media, it was different. It would be, I started teaching and then these opportunities popped up where it was, hey, our program is going on a field trip here. Do you want to chaperone that field trip? Hey, we're having this event over here. Do you want to go to that? We have this special event here. And suddenly it was like, I literally can't, there's 3 events on the same day and I can only go to one of them, but I want to go to all of them. So how do I decide what to go to and what not to go to? And that was the first time I was in that situation of figuring out it's very easy to say no to things that are just unappealing or bad. It's very difficult to say no to things that you want to say yes to and to figure out, you have all these options. You want to say yes to all of them, but you can't. How do you decide that? That was difficult. And it seems like that's kind of where the YouTube channel is heading now, which is great. It's such a privileged situation to be in and like a first world problem, but it's a very different situation than what you're in, at least what I've been in any time before that. And so navigating that is interesting. I'm very hopeful that I don't burn any bridges with any companies or partners that I would actually like to work with, but I'm trying very hard to just be authentic and open. And essentially what I'm thinking is, if the people who watch my videos somehow got a hold of like these email chains between the companies and I back and forth, they would be totally happy and cool with everything that they read. I don't want there to be like, these suckers who watch these videos will totally buy into this terrible product and will get all of their money. Ha 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 ha. Like, what losers? And then everyone's like, this is what he really thinks about us? No, I want it to be very, very clear. Like, oh yeah, he's just trying to do things that are in line with the goal of his channel. And it's so interesting because way back 3 years ago when I started my channel, this was not something that I was interested in doing at all. I specifically was like, this is not a source of income. I don't want to sell ad space. I don't want to monetize anything. But it just kind of organically grew, as a lot of you know. And once it organically grew to a point where it was more than a little blip on the radar, and that was without any real conscious effort or strategy, the natural question was, well, what if I did put some actual strategy behind this and some effort into it? Would it go somewhere interesting? And so that's the journey that I'm on right now, and that's part of the LLC that Heather and I started, and that's what we're doing. So that's been very exciting. That was supposed to be a quick update, and it was 25 minutes. So we will jump now into what we're actually going to talk about today. So as I mentioned, I wanted to keep the main topic of today's episode positive, and I've been dealing with a lot of my students and working through things, and it's very interesting because right now with the quarantine, we're not going back to physical school this school year, and the thing that everyone has been saying is school is not canceled, it's just online, which is true, but there's also like most of the students are not checking in online, and there's no way we can legally mandate for them to do that. So in a large way, everything that we're doing is just supplementary and voluntary. And there are a lot of kids, fortunately, especially in like programs like mine, which are fun and engaging just because of the subject matter, not necessarily because of the teacher, that want to be a part of it. They want to do stuff. And if I schedule a Zoom meeting or whatever, they will pop in and everybody's involved and we're trying to figure out what to do. There's other students who are just like, yeah, if school's making it so I don't have to do this, I'm not going to do that. And then there's other kids who are in terrible situations where they're just dealing with basic survival needs. And the idea of like logging into Google Classroom is just not at anywhere near the top of their priority list. But wow, even so during a normal school year, especially this time of year, I am exhausted. I'm like crawling to the finish line. I feel like I'm just going to fall over and pass out. And this has been interesting because now that we've not been in the classroom for like 5 or 6 weeks, I miss it, and I miss working with students, and I miss seeing all these people, and I miss that energy. And even though there is that level of exhaustion, there's also that level of invigoration from being around that. And it's been really nice to have the students who are genuinely interested in, digital media and creating their own stuff and exploring these things to reach out and ask for help and have these questions. And so what I wanted to cover today are 5 things that I have learned from my students over the past 8 years that I've been a digital media teacher. And I think that this is interesting because you don't really realize how much you learn from teaching others until you take time to think about it. But I've always believed that teaching is the best way to learn something because it just forces you to put yourself in a different position that makes you rethink things differently. But being a teacher also puts you in a position of essentially running these social experiments every year. And you can see, like, if I start the year this way, what happens now? And if I do this, does this happen here? And if I behave this way or I implement this, what happens here? And if I do things in this order, does it yield a better result? And I feel like now over the years, I have enough data to kind of back up some of that. And I've also noticed significant trends. And even though the technology has evolved over the past 8 years, the basics are kind of the same. And most importantly, the students are the same. Like they're, generationally slightly shifting a little bit, but their needs are the same. They still need support. They still need the education. They need a positive environment. They need the ability to be creative and to make these mistakes creatively and to fail creatively. And that's one of the things. I was reading a discussion online somewhere about whether or not film school is worth it. And it was interesting because, I have my thoughts about whether or not film school is worth it. And it always kind of comes down to a discussion of practical experiences versus networking experience. And a lot of people say, I didn't go to film school, so that's why I'm not really voicing my opinion. But I've heard lots of people who went to film school, and I've known lots of people who have said, if you just want to learn to use equipment, it's way cheaper to not go to film school. You can take a fraction of the money you'd spend on film school, get some of your own gear, and then make your own work, build your own client base. Film school helped them with networking and building these connections and knowing people. So when they were done with it, they could actually hire people or be hired by people. And it was like a whole cohort kind of like coming up within the industry together. But the discussion I found, I don't know what it was, some article or something led to a discussion that I was reading. But what some people were saying was that a big value of film school is that it's the freedom to fail without consequence. And obviously, like, you could fail your classes or whatever, but if you try something new or you try something experimental and it doesn't work, or time just ends up essentially being wasted because the project couldn't get finished, but you still learn something from it, there's no real consequence. But in the industry or working with clients, there are consequences to those things. You don't have that freedom. You don't have that luxury anymore. And so I thought that was a very interesting take on film school. And that's what I've seen also just in my program is, because it's high school, there's even less risk. So the ability to fail, not the class, but to fail at trying something new without real consequence is huge. And I wouldn't even say there's no consequence, but if someone's trying to make a project, they try to do something that's maybe beyond them or it didn't work out and they're not able to finish that project, that is absolutely not necessarily a failure, because it's giving you experience, it's giving you knowledge, it's giving you a practical skill set that you can implement into a future project that will get completed. So it's all just part of that learning experience. So this is what I've noticed. These are 5 things I put together where over the years, every single one of my students who I have noticed that has significantly leveled up their skills has shared these qualities or learned these lessons. So it's not that every student does them, but among the students who have really kind of like reached a different level in terms of their skills and abilities, these are the common things that I've noticed between them, which is interesting because I've taught at 2 different schools over the past 10 years, but I've taught digital media over the past 8. And so the students are from slightly different areas, different ages. I teach grades 9 through 12, different interests, different personalities, different academic performances. Those are all entirely different throughout this group of students. And in all, I'm probably thinking of, let's see, let's do some basic math here. I have about 200 students per year, and that's 8 years. What is 2 times 8? That's 1,600 students. So out of those 1,600 students, I'm probably talking about, it's a smaller number, maybe under 50. But the ones that are like, by the time they're still in high school, are genuinely hireable by a client or a company to create this stuff and to do this. Like, they have that level of skill set. This is what I've noticed between them. And some of them joined my program, doing terribly or knowing nothing, but they push themselves differently. And these are some of the things, in no real particular order, that they have all shared over the years. And number 1, audio is half of video. I talk about this a lot, but this is the first giant leap that I see in student production abilities. Lots of students can come into my class and know how to make things that look cool, even if it's just filming on a phone. They know how to, get cool angles, get cool shots, communicate things well, even edit stuff together pretty decently. But wow, the sound is terrible. You can't hear what people are saying. The levels are all over the place. There's no sound effects or audio engineering taking place at all. And as soon as they start paying attention to that, it is a night and day difference in the quality of their work. So as soon as they pay attention to audio, it's like everything about their videos gets better. And once it's one of those things, once you start paying attention to it, you can't unpay attention to it. So you're cursed, for lack of a better term. And once they know that, then they start paying attention to the stuff they're consuming, videos and movies and TV shows. And then they start seeing what they like, what they don't like, and implementing those skills and techniques into their own work. And things just keep getting better and better. So as soon as somebody who's focused on making videos starts treating audio with equal importance as the video, that's where things really start leveling up. The second thing, which is huge, especially at the high school level, is do not let inexperience stop you. That's a huge thing that I've learned from them, because in general, a high school kid doesn't have any experience. Like, really, I work on resumes with my students. The resumes are oftentimes blank. It's got their name, the school that they go to, maybe they got like student of the month in 5th grade or something, and that's it. And now they know how to use like Final Cut, kind of. And so it's a pretty bare resume. But inevitably, as soon as they start working with cameras and working with gear, people outside of school in their lives start noticing these things, start asking them to help out with stuff, either free or paid. And I've noticed every student who really levels up their ability, even if they've never done it before, they're okay diving in. You know, if someone wants them to film a wedding, if someone wants them to do a promo video, a music video, take some photos for a website or whatever, they'll dive in and do it. And they'll be honest about it. They'll say, like, I haven't done this before, or I am a student, or, you know, like, they'll be clear about where they're coming from, but they'll still dive in and they'll ask for help when they need it, and they'll work with the person. You know, I'm kind of there making sure that it's not some super shady thing where they're being taken advantage of, but it very rarely is that the case. Oftentimes it's literally just like, hey, here's a teacher from another school who's having a really low-key wedding, and they not only don't want to spend a ton of money on a photographer, but they like the idea of including a student. Okay, cool. Student's going to take pictures at their wedding. Student's never done that before. They don't know necessarily all the key moments to capture, all the exact gear to use, but they will definitely try their best. They will do a acceptable job based on what that teacher needs, and then they will get better and better. But so many people would get to the point where they would just say, but I've never done that before, so I'm never going to do it. Especially as we get older, it's so easy to just, but I don't know how to do that, so no, I'm not going to do that. And with the students I have who've seen success and leveling up, they don't let their inexperience stop them. They're responsible with how they approach new things, but they don't let their inexperience get in the way. Which ties into point number 3. Successful students, when it comes to digital media, they have taught me that planning is key. And planning is the hardest thing to get students to do because they don't want to do it. Pre-production is the least exciting part of a project. And it's so tricky because I can say over and over again to my students, those of you who spend more time planning out, scripting, storyboarding, scheduling, whatever, taking the time to plan out your projects will always end up with better projects at the end. And the same goes for me. When I just wing a video, sometimes it's not very good, sometimes it's fine. But when I actually take the time to be intentional and think about things and plan things, the end result is always better. Well, like 95% of the time it's better. And so planning is key, and I've just seen the difference that makes. It drives me crazy when we do our critiques at the end of a project in class, and we've spent, 5 weeks working on something. So everyone has the exact same amount of time. And I always make students pitch their projects before we critique them and tell us about them. And inevitably, there will be someone who shows up and they're like, yeah, well, this is, I wanted to do something that focused on blah, 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 and we really tried to do this and that, and this is what we came up with or whatever. And then we see their thing, and it's amazing. And then we see someone else get up, and they're like, well, we just didn't really have enough time. And it's like, you guys had not only did you have enough time, you had 5 weeks. It's like an eternity. But everybody in here had the exact same amount of time, and someone just created a work of art, and you created a work of garbage. So, like, not that I would say that, but, it's easy to tell when something was created with care and time and planning, and when something was filmed, the day before on a phone and not edited or something. And it all comes down to that planning and that organization, which is oftentimes the least fun part, but it really, really pays off. It's just like, you can build the house that you want to build. You can talk about the architecture and the design and the layout and all the rooms and the finishes and all that stuff. But if it's not built on a solid foundation, it's just not going to stand up. And the same thing goes with these kinds of projects, with digital media projects. You have all these ideas, you have all these things you want to do, which is awesome. But if you're not creating the foundation for yourself through the planning, the odds of being successful go down a lot. And so what I have learned, even for myself, how important planning is when you're trying to do something successful, which also leads into quality number 4, and that is do not be afraid to ask for help. Luckily, students are used to asking their teachers for help. So if they don't know how to do something, they'll just say, hey, Mr. Buck, I don't know how to do this. Like, can you help me with blah, blah, blah? And it took me a long time to be okay with going, I don't know how to do that. And I say that because when I started teaching digital media, we were using Final Cut Pro, or the kids were, and I had not really ever used it. I didn't know how to do that. I kind of used iMovie a little bit. I had used Premiere. Years before, I'd used Avid, but I had not used Final Cut Pro 10. And then I was in this room where these students were opening up Final Cut Pro, and hey, how do we do this and that? And it's like, I remember, I would literally learn something. I'd kind of go to my desk and Google something secretly and then go, okay, like try clicking this and that. Okay, and then I figure that out. And then the next class period, when someone had a similar question, I could be like, oh yeah, you just got to click on, file and consolidate library media or whatever. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And especially like, I was a new digital media teacher. I didn't want people to think I didn't know what I was doing. And obviously, like, I worked through the stuff on my own enough to build up that skill set. But what I've learned now, especially because my students' skill sets are so broad, that, yeah, if someone has a Final Cut Pro question, I can probably answer it. If someone has an Adobe After Effects question, unless it's real basic, I'm definitely going to need some help. And I have learned that there's absolutely nothing wrong with when they ask me, hey, Mr. Buck, how do I do this thing that you don't know how to do? I can go, ooh, I don't know. Let's Google it. Like, let's figure it out. Let's find a YouTube thing. And then I'll work with them to do that. And it actually, one, it shows me that it's okay to ask for help. Two, it shows them that it's okay not to know everything, as long as you can figure out how to know what you need to know. And then we go, okay, here's YouTube things. Here's message board with answers. Here's some tutorials over here. And sometimes I'll know, like, hey, there's a guy in this class that's really good at this specific software. And we'll just go, hey, do you know how to do blah, blah, blah in After Effects? And then they'll come over and tell us. And so the student asks me for help and then sees me ask someone else for help because I don't know how to do the thing. And it solves the problem so quickly, so easily. It builds better relationships, and it gets everyone where we need to go. We all learn what we need to learn. So the not being scared to ask for help, not feeling like you're at a point like, well, I should know this. I can't let someone know that I don't know something that seems so fundamental to the thing that I'm supposed to be an expert at. No, it's fine to not know things. Like, just admit you don't know it, and then someone will help you learn it, or you'll figure it out, and then you will know the thing. And then you'll know more because now you know the thing you didn't know because you weren't too insecure to admit that you didn't know it. And asking for help is absolutely key. And the last thing I want to go over, I could go on a list for days about stuff I've learned from students, but the last number 5 of my list of 5 things that I've learned from students over the past 8 years is don't let gear stop you, but it does matter sometimes. And this is important because if you're a YouTube creator, especially in the photo video space, one of the biggest things you will hear is the gear does not matter. The gear does not matter. Don't let the gear stop you. I've even said it in some of my videos, and it's kind of true, but it's also kind of not true. It's true in that for people who just want to make something, like I just really want to make something, but I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right editing software. I don't have the right lights. I don't have the right audio. Like, get that mindset gone. You probably do have a phone. You probably do have some kind of camera. Use those things the best that you can and then move on. The best camera is not the one that you have. It's the one that you know how to use. So if that's your phone and you know how to download an app that gives you full manual control over your phone's camera, you can get really good results on that. Much better than you would get just using a DSLR in full auto mode. So there is very much truth to the idea that don't let gear stop you or don't let gear get in the way. And students don't do that. A student will go to an event with a Canon Rebel where they probably should have something that's a little bit bigger and more robust, or they'll go with a kit lens when they should have a telephoto lens, or they'll use their phone for audio when they could be using a nice wireless boom system or whatever. They'll be using their desk lamp instead of a nice Aputure light or something. But those are all workable solutions that everybody kind of has to, they're like almost growing pains, rites of passage to go through that. So not letting the gear stop you is important, but it does actually matter sometimes. And recognizing that is important because if you, for example, you want really shallow depth of field in something for whatever reason, stylistically, or you need to draw focus to a certain thing, there are certain pieces of equipment that are going to let you have a very sharp subject with a very blurry background. And there are certain things that just aren't going to make that possible. And so it doesn't really matter how proficient you are with your GoPro. It's not going to give you a shallow depth of field. Whereas, a DSLR or a mirrorless camera with a nice prime lens is going to give you a great, beautiful, crisp, shallow depth of field. And so you need to learn that. Like, in some cases, this thing I have just isn't going to be doing what I need to do. If you want a big, soft key light for a talking headshot and all that you have is your iPhone's flashlight, it's going to give you lighting that's going to give you a mood and a tone within your shot, but it's not going to be the lighting that you're looking for. And so you're going to need different equipment. You're going to need to look at things a little different. You're going to need to adapt a little bit differently. But ultimately, you don't want to fall into that trap of that means, well, I need to get everything before I can do anything. So I need to have all of the professional gear, all of the cameras and lenses and lights and audio and whatever, and then I'll be ready to take on clients and projects and be hired for things. You don't want to do that. I think the best thing to do is to start with what you have and then upgrade as your needs become apparent. So cool, start with whatever camera you're using. And then if you realize that, the low light performance isn't good enough for you, or the lens is too wide or too zoomed in or whatever, then you can get specific gear to solve those problems as time goes on. And it's going to probably work a lot better for you. So learning that the gear's not going to stop you. You can still grab your phone and make something that's amazing, but that it does matter sometimes really helps you to focus on what's important, but not let it stop you from diving in and getting the experience of making something. And that, the biggest thing that all of these 5 traits go into, have in common, is that they all tie into students actually doing something. Meaning that they're not just sitting there watching tutorials. They're not just sitting there thinking about it or talking about it, but they're actually making things. They're failing at it. They're succeeding at it. They're trying new things. And every time it's a little bit better, a little bit better. The things they made this month are better than things they made last month. At the end of the school year, they look at the stuff they made at the beginning and cringe a little bit. And that's good. That's how it should be. YouTube recommended one of my own old videos to me for some reason the other day, and I clicked on it and I was like, oh no, I don't want to watch this. But that's a good thing. I shouldn't feel like the thing I made 2.5 years ago is the best thing in the world that I've ever made, because I hopefully have grown a little bit in my skills and abilities since then, even if the thing from 2.5 years ago is fine or is really well done. So those are the 5 things that I've learned from my students. And I just think that as a teacher, it's important to remember that I can show up to my classroom with all the plans in the world, all the equipment in the world, all the ideas in the world, but it really doesn't matter if the students aren't on board with it. And so I'm really fortunate to have students who are happy to trust me enough to try this stuff. And I'm really fortunate that also means I get to learn a lot from them every single day and build my own skill set along the way. So even though they're the ones in school, I'm also learning a lot. Before we wrap up today, I want to talk about some gear of the week. And this is something that I'm really excited about. Unfortunately, I would consider it very affordable. And that is the Aputure MC Light. I don't know what else to call it. MC Light sounds like a hip hop name or something, but basically it's this little tiny rectangular light from Aputure that they just came out with a while ago. I've had the older version of this, which sells for about $40, $45, and it's literally like the size of a credit card, but thicker because it's a light. And it's just this little bright LED light. You can fit it anywhere. I use it for accent lights in all my videos. It's super, super helpful. And I like it so much that I wanted to get a second one. And then when I went to look for a second one, I saw that they had released a new one since then, which is more expensive. It's about $100, like $90 to $100, but it's so much better. The old one I have it's very plasticky and the battery doesn't last very long. The new one, the MC, it's this amazing little light. It's so incredibly bright. You could legit, depending on your lens and stuff, you could probably get away with using it as a key light in a desperate situation. Like if you're traveling and you're filming something in a hotel room or whatever, you could definitely use it as a key light. It's also an RGB light, so you can change it to any color. It has wireless charging. So if you have a wireless charger for your phone, you can just toss the light onto that and it will charge. It has USB fast charging. The battery lasts a lot longer. It's really easy to use. It's a little more robustly built. It comes with this diffuser that actually works. It almost looks like this big plastic dome thing that kind of goes, like it's almost like a silicone, I don't know, soft rubbery dome thing that goes on and acts as a diffuser, and it actually works. I've never seen a small light like this have a diffuser that actually works. So not only is it RGB, but you're getting any of those colors with nice soft diffusion. And I've been using it as an accent light for products in my videos lately, and I love it. It's so much fun. It's got magnets on the back of this light, so you can stick it, like they're really strong magnets, so you can attach it to all kinds of stuff, and basically it opens up a lot more possibilities than you had before. And it has an app that goes with it, which is less clunky than you would expect from an app like this. And it kind of works like a Philips Hue light where you can select the colors. So you can use the on light dial to select different colors and hue, saturation, and luminance and stuff. Or you can just use the app and select what you want, which is much easier. You can set up scenes, you can create presets and things like that. You can also, which is very cool, you can also use the app to match the light to something in your environment. So if you're wearing a certain color shirt, you can like use your phone to capture the color of your shirt, and then the light will match your shirt or your hair or an object or something outside or whatever. So it makes it really cool to be able to match sources, and you can match it to other lights. So if you have an existing light, you're not exactly sure what color temperature it is, you can match it exactly with literally just a click of a button. For $90, I've never seen a better deal in terms of lighting. It's incredible. I'm kind of sad that I only have the one. I might end up getting another one at some point because it's just so useful. So that is definitely my recommendation as gear of the week for this week. And then also, before we go, depending on when you're listening to this, Rode, the company that I just talked about, they just announced their new version of the My Roadcast podcast competition. This sounds like I'm advertising it, but I'm not, except that I am. I'm advertising it to you because I want to, not because they have any idea that I'm doing this. But it's a really cool thing that Rode does every year. They do like a podcast contest where you can submit your podcast, just a 1 to 2 minute sample of an episode. It can be anything you want, produced any way that you want, and then people just vote for it, and judges look at it, and they give away like an insane amount of gear to the top 3 winners. It's a really cool thing. It's super easy to enter. I think it runs all the way through June sometimes, so you have all of May and then a little bit of June to enter. The reason I'm really suggesting you enter it is I don't know how easy it is to win or whatever, but last year, just for entering, the first 300 people got that Rode mobile interview kit, which I did a whole video on. It's the thing you plug into your phone, and there's 2 lavalier mics, and you can do like podcasts and interviews just using your phone as a recorder. I think that usually sells for like $200, and they just gave one to each of the first 300 entries. I don't know if they're doing anything like that this year, but I did see them talk about like Adobe Creative Cloud subscriptions and some other things for people who are entering. So my point is, even if you're not one of the top winners, you can potentially like get yourself some cool gear or support or software access or whatever just by submitting something. And it's literally all you have to do is record 1 to 2 minutes and send it in. So if you haven't done that, I really recommend it. It's called My Roadcast. If you just Google it, you'll find it. I think that's also the URL to their website. Otherwise, it's been really nice to talk to you, and I hope you're doing well. As always, please feel free to visit anchor.fm/enthusiasm, click on leave a message, and leave me a voice message so I can have you be a part of a future episode. I would really enjoy getting more voice messages. If you want to reach out to me, of course, I'm at SodarnTom on all the things, and new videos on the Enthusiasm Project channel on YouTube every Thursday. That's all that I have for you. So take care, stay safe. Thanks for listening. I will see you next time.